God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Chapter 4, Part 3. A speaking tour stained with tears. Mom, you're packing your suitcase again? I didn't answer my third daughter, Jin, right away. My eldest daughter, Jin, who was beside me and had been silently helping me pack, asked, "Mother, where are you going this time?" That is the first thing my children would ask when they saw me take out a suitcase and start packing. Children wish for their mother to always be near them, playing with them, embracing them. However, bound by church activities, meeting with people and taking frequent trips, I was away from my children more than I was with them. Taking out my suitcase to pack my things signaled to my children that I was at the beginning of another mission far from home. Although traveling can be enjoyable, when it is a mission, challenges set in from the moment you leave. Even if you stay in a palace, your heart is not at ease, as it is not your home. Furthermore, if you are entrusted with a public mission, each step you take is laden with heavy responsibility. For a decade after the holy wedding in 1960, I was rarely at home, so I was rarely comfortable. I went around the entire country, one day visiting a small village near the demarcation line with North Korea, another day journeying to a remote island village, taking part in events and sharing time with members. My heart was not able to relax for even a single day. In 1969, crossing the ocean to Japan marked the beginning of my life of international tours. I treated each new land as my own and the people in each country as my brothers and sisters. Upon arriving in a new city, despite the demanding schedule, I would find time to buy postcards. At the end of the day, though it was often past midnight, I would write letters to my children, who were wishing I were at home. Dear Hyojin, I miss you and want to see you. My son, whom I always call to and think of and run to and hug, my good, cute, precious, beloved son, whom I never want to let go of, I miss you. So, Hyojin, though we are separated for a while, you are one of heaven's happy sons, our filial son, Hyojin. Our good-hearted and wise Hyojin, I love you. I know you will become a filial son of heaven, a filial son of earth and a filial son of the universe. You will become a good example of a filial child. Both Appa and Oma feel so sad that we are too busy following the will and have such little time to spend with you. Yet we feel so proud and secure because of you. Hyojin, you are different from other children. Even though you run around with your friends, you must remember your origin is God, and not damage his dignity. Appa and Oma are always proud of you. When we see you in the near future, can you surprise your Appa and Oma a lot? Appa and Oma have a great dream for you. Oma is waiting and always praying for that. Stay healthy. Goodbye. The fact that I could not spend much quality time with my children due to my various public responsibilities always weighed on my mind. Despite this, my children were very mature for their age and grew up well. Once my eldest son Hyojin was interviewed by a newspaper reporter. What do you respect most about your mother? Hyojin answered without hesitation. I admire my mother's love and perseverance in embracing my father and making him happy. All mothers in the world are great, but my mother especially absolutely trusts and encourages us. I'm always deeply moved by how she does that. It's really amazing that she gave birth to 14 children even though she's always so busy with global affairs. Even on the hottest of summer days, I will not get into a cold swimming pool. It's because, as I mentioned, I gave birth to many children, 4 of them through cesarean sections. When I was giving birth to our 6th son, Jin, I was in danger because his head was so large. My husband was in Germany, and I was told it would be dangerous for both mother and baby if we did not act within 30 minutes, so I had no choice but to undergo a cesarean section. Once you've had a cesarean section, it becomes difficult to give birth naturally. That being so, I prayed with a desperate heart. During that prayer, the scene of Jesus' crucifixion came to me. I managed the pain with the resolution that, through the birth of new life, I would overcome the force of death that surrounded Jesus on Calvary. As it is for all women, my giving birth to a new life was an experience of heaven and hell. I did not find it easy to have 4 C-sections, yet each time I gave birth I was ready to die for the sake of God and for the sake of a new life. In the same way that our house grew lively as we filled it with children, our churches kept springing up in cities and villages, filled with new members. From the outset, however, our goal was not to have the biggest church in Korea. Our goal was to bring salvation to the world, as a true church that would wipe away all of humanity's tears. To accomplish that goal, I went on multiple world tours following the first one in 1969. From the early 90s, I was the keynote speaker. I gave more speeches at more rallies, events, gatherings and seminars that I can count. My footprints are found in almost every corner of the globe, ranging from unfamiliar metropolises to small primitive villages, from deserts scorched by the burning sun, to thick jungles and breathtaking highlands. At each place, marginalized people, helpless women, children and minority groups were waiting for me. And I anxiously looked forward to seeing them. I knew I could offer them peace of mind and that at every step I took advanced the cause of peace. Knowing this enabled me to return to a room in a different hotel every night, and resume the work at dawn the following day. It was typical for me to enter such a room in an unfamiliar city and sleep in a chair for a few hours, or to close my eyes while leaning back in a waiting room at an airport. Sometimes I came and went from a city without opening my suitcase. My mind was on meeting the people who were waiting for me. When I spoke in a communist nation for the first time, I sensed the presence of spirit persons outnumbering the living people who received me. While the region was embroiled in war, I went to Croatia. The moment I entered my hotel room, I knew that there were souls that had undergone unjust and miserable deaths, waiting for liberation. To liberate them, I did an all-night prayer vigil. When I go to Africa, I take anti-malarial medication. Once, an incorrect prescription caused me to suffer severe side effects, and I caught malaria, experiencing pain and a high fever. My hectic tour schedule left me no time for treatment. Somehow, along the way, the malaria disappeared. In the autumn of 1996, I went to Bolivia, where I had an experience I cannot forget. The capital, La Paz, is the highest major city in the world, at an altitude of almost 4,000 meters. Non-natives inevitably suffer from altitude sickness. Scheduled to speak for nearly an hour, I had an oxygen tank beside me at the podium. To make matters worse, the podium started to tip over every time I leaned on it slightly. The only solution was to have a strong young member hold the podium steady while I spoke. People were concerned, but I smiled throughout the speech. I felt nauseous and had a throbbing headache and my legs were trembling, but I ignored it all. Under such circumstances, on the verge of collapsing, kept a stiff upper lip and carried on. The audience was impressed, and people complimented me for my presentation. A local dignitary said, "She really is a person sent by God." The event was a tremendous success, and at the victory celebration that evening, I warmly held the hands of each participating member individually. Even though I was exhausted, I maintained a high spirit for the sake of the precious guests, VIPs and members who had come from far away to meet me. It turned into a joyous occasion as we encouraged each other. When I returned home, my husband, who listened to all my speeches through the phone or, later, the internet, patted me on the back and expressed his appreciation. "Where else could you get such a blessing?" he said, "having such success at a place that is 4,000 meters closer to heaven." Besides bringing the word of God, during my tours I conducted ceremonies to liberate the spirits of those whose lives had been sacrificed. The true parent's victory upon the earth has opened the gates of resurrection in the spirit world. The members in Austria, in the spring of 2018, carried out such a ceremony. If you follow the Danube River west from Vienna for about 2 hours, you come to the village of Mauthausen. Amid its beautiful scenery is a visitor's center in front of a depressing and sinister-looking building. That building with its towering walls of thick, gray brick brings on tears of bitter grief, for during the Second World War it was a concentration camp. There, the Nazis incarcerated Jews and many others. Many of the almost 200,000 people that passed through Mauthausen met miserable deaths. What remains are not relics from 70 years ago. The true pain one feels there is that of the spirit persons who are stuck in that prison, trapped in their resentment. They can resurrect only after the true parents of healing and hope can console them and alleviate their bitter resentment and sadness. It happened like this. I had traveled to Vienna to hold the 2018 Peace Starts With Me rally in the Wiener Stadthalle. The event was a great success. Dr. Werner Faslavend, Austria's former defense minister and a great senior statesman, welcomed me to the podium, and more than 10,000 people heard my message of hope for the future and for a Europe that would live for the sake of others. I was especially encouraged by the bright spirits of the young people who pledged themselves for peace. But the next morning at breakfast, some of our European leaders came to me with serious faces to present a special request that I permit a ceremony of liberation at Mauthausen. They had heard about my liberation prayers offered for the victims of slavery on Gorée Island in Senegal, and urgently asked me to extend the same heavenly grace to the victims of Nazi persecution. I sent special representatives to hold a liberation ceremony in Mauthausen. They presented lilies, which represent eternal love, and offered special prayers, opening the gate to alleviate the suffering of those tormented souls. They prayed that those people, now in the spirit world, could release their sadness and resentment and become absolute good spirits who would find their way to the realm of blessing and joy that God has prepared for us all. It is important to build memorials and educate people about historical wrongs. Still, the higher priority is to release the bitter anguish and anger harbored by those who came before us and who suffered and died unjustly. Wherever I go, people who don't know me grasp both my hands tightly, not wanting to let go. Their sorrow upon my departure is deeply engraved in my heart. Many people want to see me, and after we spend time together, they feel an emptiness when I'm gone. This is because we are bound by heaven. Our original parents broke away from God's embrace 6,000 years ago. The only begotten Son and only begotten daughter are reconnecting heaven, earth and humankind and guiding people to live a true life. That is why some people are brought to tears when they meet God's only begotten daughter. I have traveled hundreds and thousands of kilometers over the decades to convey God's love. Although my journey has often been very difficult, I have always been happy. My words and footprints will never disappear. Each and every day they will multiply, bearing fruit that will nourish this world and beyond. Mother of Peace. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Chapter 4, Part 4. Daffodils. What does Belvedere mean? I asked our first missionary to the United States. In Italian, she answered, it means beautiful scenery, a magnificent view. Dr. Young Eun Kim was a former professor, a Korean woman educated in Methodist theology in Canada who had joined our movement by the guidance of Jesus. Having mobilized American members to raise the necessary funds by selling candles, this devoted missionary prepared this training center for our international movement. Called Belvedere, it is a lovely estate on the Hudson River in Tarrytown, New York. I like the name as it befits a place where people could deeply experience God's love in a serene environment. Beginning in 1972, amid Belvedere's beautiful trees and expansive lawns, our American members and guests were taught the principle through workshops ranging from a 2-day weekend to 100 days. My husband gave sermons at 6 a.m. every Sunday as well. The training center would often be crowded with young people from all over the world who came to meet my husband and me. I planted yellow daffodils at Belvedere and our nearby East Garden Residence and Conference Center. Why daffodils? Daffodils are the harbingers of spring. As the first flowers to pierce through the frozen ground after withstanding the cold of winter, they herald the coming of warmth and new life. I am always amazed at this providence displayed by Mother Nature and by the strength of the sprouts that appear where snow still remains. Roses and lilies that bloom in spring or midsummer are beautiful, but I most appreciate the little daffodil, whose humble, unassuming bloom breaks the spell of the cold winter. Called to be the only begotten daughter and true mother, my path is to break through the icy grip of human sin and help bring God's blessing to the world. I often identify with this lovely flower. Returning to Belvedere for a special event in the summer of 2016 was a joy. It was June 1st and the American members were commemorating the 40th anniversary of the God Bless America rally at Yankee Stadium. That 1976 rally was a monumental event for us. There, my husband proclaimed America's responsibility as the land God prepared to bring the unity of all races, nations and religions through its Christian spirit and foundation. That God needed to call a Korean movement, the Unification Church of Sun Myung Moon and Hak Ja Han, to remind America of its destiny is somewhat ironic. Following God, we sought with all our might to awaken America, which had fallen into chaos and corruption. At that time, Father Moon and I were known only as the founders of an emerging religious movement from the East. I feel today, a half a century later, as I did then, desperate with the hope of giving birth to God's global peace kingdom. With this heart, I felt so grateful to the families gathered at Belvedere in 2016 who came to celebrate this 40th anniversary. They were in their 20s in 1976, and now here they were, with their children and grandchildren. It was a field of daffodils. At one point, we sang, "You're My Sunshine." It is a simple song but one I will never forget because of its deep significance. I was overcome with deep emotion, silently meditating, reliving the memories that flooded through me. The Puritan spirit of seeking God and religious liberty at all costs gave birth to the United States of America. Nonetheless, over time, America permitted a selfish and decadent culture to emerge and displace its original concern for God's will. Traditional Christianity lacked spiritual resources to prevent the rise of sexual immorality and materialism. Arriving here in December 1971, my husband and I, with our members, invested all our strength to resurrect the founding spirit of America and awaken Americans to their God-given responsibilities. God's dream is for all people in the world to live with gratitude in the peaceful, happy realm of God's love. To achieve this, we knew we had to stir up a revolutionary culture of heart. This was the impetus for our Yankee Stadium rally on June 1, 1976. The year 1976 was the bicentennial of the founding of the United States. As Koreans, citizens of a republic that owed its existence in large part to the United States, we love America. Since 1972, my husband had been speaking emphatically throughout America, saying, "God sent me in the role of a doctor and as a firefighter to save America." We believe that America is a chosen nation, and we declared as our theme for the 1976 rally, "God Bless America." We raised our voices to shout that, without overcoming the danger of communism and the breakdown of family-centered morality, America would utterly fail God. Throughout April and May of 1976, our worldwide membership prayed for success at Yankee Stadium. Volunteers came to New York from across the United States, as well as from Japan and Europe, to invite people to attend. They reached out tirelessly and enthusiastically. We tried in those 2 months to awaken a sleeping giant, to revive the democratic world by countering the influence of communism and the culture of drugs and free sex that was destroying the moral fiber of America's young people. We considered the bicentennial a crossroads, an event that would signal whether or not we could change America's direction. Through our members' hard work, people from throughout the tri-state area and our supporters from other states and nations gathered. And on that first day of June, others gathered as well. Just as in Korea, where from the right and left, Christians and communists united to accuse and attack, outside Yankee Stadium the demonstrators were yelling, screaming and heaping all kinds of ridicule upon us. The police couldn't handle it, so we sent many of our core members out of their seats inside to cordon off the crowds of opponents and allow the more than 50,000 people to enter peacefully. As history records, however, the real drama of Yankee Stadium was not in the protests. The real drama was the weather. Even though the sky was clouding up, thousands of people were in their seats and more thousands were entering the stadium. The banners and signs, sound system and staging were all set up, the band and choir were in place. Suddenly a violent rainstorm swept in from Long Island Sound. Fierce winds blew, rain poured down, our God Bless America banners were torn off the outfield walls and our posters were soaked. The equipment on stage was blown around. The rain soaked the people as well, it was an indescribable mess. And outside the stadium, the crowd of opponents was yelling, screaming and heaping all kinds of ridicule upon us. One would have wondered, was God truly with us? Was this all part of God's plan? Then one of our young American leaders jumped onto the top of the home team dugout, raised his arms like a conductor in front of an orchestra, and started singing at the top of his lungs, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." It was like a signal flare. With one heart, everyone began to sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." A magnificent chorus spread through the stadium, and tears of joy mixed with the drops of rain flowing down everyone's faces. The summer squall, our opponents' criticism, and the scramble to protect the equipment, these had only bolstered our spirit. Even though we were soaked, no one sought shelter. Heaven was the shelter that united the people of all races, nations, and religions that filled the stadium. That singing was the condition of faith and unity that moved God. The skies over the stadium began to brighten. The darkness cast in both heaven and earth was lifted. Rays of sunshine appeared, and the festival, which seemed utterly demolished, was reborn. Our volunteers swept the stage, wiped off the media equipment, and cleared the grounds of fallen signage. Now, with the sunshine warming everyone, the program began. Before he went out to the stage, my husband said a prayer. Then he grabbed my hand and said, "Thanks to your sincere devotion and prayer, I am going on stage today." My husband's smile of gratitude was warmer than the sun that was shining through the clouds. I truly felt that we and our entire global family had pierced the darkness. From the borderline of death, we had resurrected into a bright future for heaven and earth. I brushed the cold raindrops from my face and gave him a hug of encouragement. We had strong faith in God and in the salvation of the world, and we did not lose courage, fully aware that the Almighty was with us. Compared to the hardships and oppression we faced in our homeland before coming to the United States, this was nothing. We transformed shouts of opposition into songs of glory. The pouring rain and gusts of wind blew away our signs but not our love. As my husband took the stage, the audience greeted him with loud applause. "Who are the true Americans?" he asked. True Americans are those who have a universal mind. True Americans are those who believe in the one family of humankind, transcendent of color and nationality as willed by God. True Americans are those who are proud of such international families, churches and nations consisting of all peoples. With faith and courage, the rally was a great success. It was 30 years later, in June of 2006, on our sprawling complex on Chongpyeong Lake in the Republic of Korea, that our movement opened its global capital, the Chunjeong Palace. In its gardens, I did not plant roses or lilies. I planted daffodils. And early each spring, as I see the yellow flowers peeking out from under the melting winter snow, I'm gently reminded of the Yankee Stadium event. Daffodils, which overcome the wind and snow, are a signal for the advent of new life. Their bright little petals, the color of sunlight, are the first sign that spring has finally come. They will always be here, in a special place in my heart. To me, they symbolize the beauty and peace that is blossoming worldwide in our movement. They are seemingly small, but within them is a surge of new life that leads us to forget that there ever was a winter. Mother of Peace. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Chapter 4, Part 5. As a summer rain fell upon the lawn. In his 1991 novel, Mao Tzu, an American writer, Don DeLillo, described the unification movement's mass weddings as opening the path forward for humanity. Interestingly, he depicted our 1982 blessing ceremony at Madison Square Garden as having taken place at Yankee Stadium. Mr. DeLillo in any case described a oneness and harmony among thousands of young couples devoting their marriage and family to God, and observed, "We all are Moonies, or should be." Back then, we were known, often not affectionately, as the Moonies. The name was a creation of the media. We were new and exciting. Regardless of the name, Mr. DeLillo grasped something profound. I'm sure millions of Americans had similar intuitions. Everyone indeed should, and will someday, participate in the blessing of marriage for world peace. When my husband and I arrived in the United States in December of 1971, 5 years before the Yankee Stadium rally, we saw a world adrift on a chartless ocean with no compass. The threat of communism was growing and Christianity was losing strength. Christian theologians even came up with justifications for communism. Young people wandered about, having no purpose or goals, seduced by sexual temptation and the false freedom advertised by the birth control pill. The United States, founded in the blood and sweat of people of faith who had crossed the Atlantic, risking their lives in pursuit of religious freedom, was breaking its covenant with God. From the moment of our arrival in America, we rushed forward infused with heavenly energy. Increasing numbers of young people in the United States and the Western world were drawn to our idealistic teachings. We shared our hearts with the members about the challenges the world was facing and the responsibilities that, together with them, we wished to fulfill. The democratic world is facing an urgent crisis due to the threat of communism, we explained. We must invest everything in order to overcome this. Within 2 months of our arrival, my husband and I conducted a speaking tour of 7 cities, mobilizing members in New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Berkeley. It was difficult at first, but by the time we reached California, we had overflow audiences for our 3 nights of talks. In those cities, some among the young people who attended our speaking events committed themselves to our cause. By early 1973, we had several bus teams covering the country in a house center in most states. From these groups, reinforced by energetic leaders and members from Japan and Europe, including the Korean folk ballet, we formed the One World Crusade in a choir, the New Hope Singers International. We loved their fiery passion and desire to enlighten the world. Through my husband's energy, in 1972, the year after arriving in the United States, we set in motion so many projects. We convened the first meeting of the International Conference on the Unity of the Sciences, at New York City's Waldorf Astoria Hotel. We established the American branch of the Professors World Peace Academy and strengthened the already existing Freedom Leadership Foundation, dedicated to the victory over communism. At Belvedere, we taught hundreds of young members to live according to God's Word, and in the fall of 1973, with our mobile teams and local centers fully functioning, we conducted a second national speaking tour, this time of 21 cities. In each city, we hosted a banquet for social leaders and clergy, where numerous mayors presented us with keys to their city. We then held 3 nights of public talks on God, America, and the future of Christianity. At that time, a crisis arose in America. In 1972, Richard Nixon had been elected to a second term as president by an overwhelming majority, but 1 year later, popular sentiment had turned against him. The media and Mr. Nixon's political opponents were demanding that he resign from office over the Watergate affair. His supposed allies had no power to defend him. Even Christian leaders drew back, kept silent. It was my husband who spoke out. Our movement published America in Crisis, Answer to Watergate, Forgive, Love, Unite in 21 leading newspapers. This was not about forgiving President Nixon alone, Father said, but about forgiving, loving and uniting as a nation for the sake of the world. Nixon's commitment was to win the Vietnam War and halt communist aggression into Southeast Asia. In opposition, communist affiliates confused the American public, mounting demonstrations against Nixon on college campuses and even on the National Mall. Seeking to awaken reverence for God and ignite a fire among Americans thirsting for righteousness, our members began demonstrating for God and the dignity of the American presidency. We gained media attention and the president himself took notice. Early in 1974, President Nixon sent us an invitation to meet him in the White House. Mr. Nixon was anxious, aware of the likelihood of impeachment. As members covered the White House in prayer, my husband counseled him to stand strong, confess any wrongdoing and call for national prayer, unity and renewal. On the heels of our meeting with the president, we went out again, this time to speak in 32 cities, completing our coverage of all 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii. At first, most Americans were perplexed to hear about a Christian leader from the East. But to know us is to love us, and wherever we went, people were touched and took something valuable from our message. Public interest increased by the day, and with it came controversy. The final tour of that era, this one of 8 cities, began that September 18th at New York City's Madison Square Garden with a speech entitled, "The New Future of Christianity." It was the first really large venue the Unification Church had sought to fill, and the event had an amazing impact. More than 30,000 people packed the garden, while another 20,000 had to be turned away. Without a moment's rest, we held even more rallies that impacted the world. Our confidence to fill large arenas led to greater gratitude to God, our Heavenly Parent, and to our members who were, and are, devoted to heaven's principle and providence. In the midst of this, in Korea, we displayed the power of the Victory Over Communism (VOC) movement at a rally of 1.2 million on Yeouido Island in Seoul. This led to a nationwide movement aimed at the reunification of North and South Korea in the 1980s. The VOC teaching spread beyond Japan and Asia. Through the Confederation of Associations for the Unity of the Societies of the Americas, CASA, leaders in the Western Hemisphere, including national leaders in Latin America and 70,000 members of the clergy, attended the CASA workshops. The Yankee Stadium Festival, on June 1, 1976, was the first half of the God Bless America Festival, held to honor the bicentennial year of the United States founding. With its success, we decided not to wait, but to hold a rally in Washington, D.C., at the Washington Monument, in September, just 3 months later. Not surprisingly, members of the U.S. government with less than noble motives worked with narrow-minded religious leaders and anti-cult groups that preyed upon members' parents to launch an all-out attack on us. Always on the lookout for a controversy, the media built its audience by articles and news reports disparaging and criticizing us. Arrayed against us at the Yankee Stadium and Washington Monument events were more than 30 opposition groups, including the U.S. Communist Party. Nonetheless, without a trace of fear or the remotest consideration about pulling back, my husband and I set aside our personal safety and dedicated our lives to the future of the United States. We invested all we had to wake up the American churches and people to the reality of God, the truth of the Bible, and the supreme importance of God-centered marriage and family life, beyond race, nation, and religion. Declaring this message on the vast expanse of the National Mall was our goal, and nothing could change that. After a good deal of back and forth, 40 days before the rally, the government granted the permit to hold our assembly on the National Mall. Now the die was cast. I felt as if I were entering a waterless desert with an oasis 40 days away. On the emotional level, that 40 days seemed as if it were more than 40 years. Wherever I went, whatever I did, whoever I was with, I could think only about the rally. I was so absorbed in it that I would confuse breakfast with dinner, dinner with breakfast, and miss lunch altogether. I think that I was not the only one. The rally was neither being held to promote the Unification Church nor to publicize the names of Sun Myung Moon and Hak Ja Han, quite the opposite. We sacrificed so much internally and externally to bring it about. We were informed that there might be a terrorist attack, but we were not afraid of that. Finally, September 18, 1976, arrived, and with it our rally to mark the bicentennial of the United States took place in the vast grounds surrounding the Washington Monument. My husband and I arose early that morning, prayed deeply, and headed to the National Mall with a heart more serious than that of someone on the way to the gallows, not out of fear for ourselves, but because of the enormous providential significance riding on the outcome. There, more than 300,000 people gathered by midday, peacefully, hopefully, and gratefully. It was indeed a grand and miraculous sight. The American media, the government, and certain religious hierarchies had opposed the Unification Church, but we had surmounted all challenges. The people of America's humble neighborhoods in Richmond, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Wilmington, Philadelphia, New York, New Haven, Boston, and beyond, gathered for God and for America. They were what made the Washington Monument rally a huge success. Our members had mobilized all the buses available on the East Coast, more than 1,000, and had to bite their lips as many hundreds of would-be participants were left behind at the gathering places with no more buses to transport them. It is a testimony to the people's love of God and country that true parents triggered. We could feel it. God is alive in America. My husband and I had emigrated with our family to this unfamiliar land, and we took on a challenging course. We concluded our first campaign with the success of the 3 rallies, Madison Square Garden in 1974 and the Yankee Stadium and Washington Monument rallies in 1976. Uttered with sincere devotion, our prayer was the light that ended the darkness. Its light was cast beyond the open-hearted people who attended our events, to illuminate all Americans and all people in our global village. Understandably, the American people did not automatically welcome my husband and me warmly when we arrived fresh off the boat from a land in the far distant east. They were unfamiliar with terms they were hearing for the first time, such as divine principle and true parents. There was only one reason that we were able to receive such a broad and deep response within 4 years of our arrival. It was not just that our message made sense. More than that, it was that our message reawakened the religious vision upon which the United States of America was conceived. That is what triggered the significant response. Our prayers and sincere devotion, and our message about the importance of the family, summoning young people to recover their sense of morality and to strive for the perfection of true love in the community, this is what moved the hearts of the American people, for it is the founding vision of that nation. Many young people came to realize that the principle is the truth and joined our family movement. For these brothers and sisters, the principle became the core axis of life. They shared the principle with everyone from fellow youth carrying backpacks on the West Coast to the elite leaders in the universities and the government. They gained the support of people of all races, occupations, ages, and educational backgrounds. My husband and I toured the United States to encourage and inspire not just the public, but our members. We called them to establish schools, create newspapers, get their doctorates, link cultures through programs such as the Little Angels, dance troupes and rock bands, raise funds going shop to shop and door to door, create home churches, fish businesses and restaurants, and organize volunteer service projects. On every path we trod, the blood, sweat and tears of our frontline missionaries, domestic and international, continued to flow. I was constantly in prayer. At Belvedere in the summer of 2016, the celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Yankee Stadium rally brought to mind this entire history. Returning from those memories, I viewed the hundreds of happy interracial families gathered on the lawn at Belvedere. As I rose to the podium, I set aside the emotions attached to that day of celebration and considered the future. Standing and speaking with a heart of grateful love, I let our members know that there is still much work to do. We cannot allow ourselves to be satisfied with those victories from decades ago. At the end of the day, I lingered at Belvedere. A summer rain fell upon the lawn, and once again, deep in my heart, I felt the call to focus my mind and continue on the path toward a world of hope and happiness as the Mother of Peace.